everyone. Welcome to the next STRUM Method sessions. Kind of giving people some time to get into the group. So get your guitars, get ready. We're gonna hang out for a few minutes. Today we're really gonna be needing a piece of paper and pencil. It could be as simple as one of these yellow pads here, but to make it more clear, I'm going to be working up on this board for you today. You might be asking, I thought we were playing guitar. And a lot of guitar playing and learning about playing guitar has more to do than just the act of strumming and making sound. So today we're going to be going into the next part of our STRUM Method sessions, which is the R, which stands for read or remembering chord charts, tabs, and theory. Oops. To know the difference between all those. So we're going to be doing that by writing different chords in different formats, so you can understand the difference. So welcome. I'm Marty, your Jam Fast founder, and here today on Friday afternoon, we're going to be looking into, again, the difference between chord charts, chord tabs, and theory. A lot of beginning guitarists think that all of the theory that guitarists need to know is wrapped up in this one subject of charts, which is not true. There's actually a really big distinction between what chord charts are, what chord tablature is, or it's short for tabs, is probably the one term that you're more familiar with, and some basic music theory. Those all have very different looks to them, and they help us in different ways. They're all different tools, so we need to know how to use that. So today, we're actually going to be putting the guitar down. So I'm going to be unplugging my guitar here and hanging this back up. Try to get some paper and pencil. I have this great big poster board and a pen for you today. All right. So yeah, again, STRUM Method is all about our 5 principles to learn how to play guitar. And one of those essential principles has nothing to do with actually touching our guitar. And that's kind of more the cerebral academic aspect of playing guitar, so that we understand how to read chord charts, how to understand chord charts, how to read tablature, and a little bit of theory. I know music theory can sometimes be frightening because it really is its own language. And so there's a lot to know about it, but there's really not much that we need to know as guitar players that can really take our guitar playing to that next level. So today we're going to be looking between those 3. And a big question is, why do I need to know this? And it's so that you could do exactly what the concept of STRUM Method is all about, which is to play any song within a couple of minutes. We need to be able to sit down in a chair, pull up a guitar chord chart, some tablature, or again, some sheet music, or even just using our ear and working from a friend. But it takes a bunch of different tools to be able to do that. And one of these is to understand the differences between these 3 subjects that we're going to be looking at today. So I hope you have your piece of paper and pencil out. This is how we're going to start today. It's going to be making our 3 different categories. We're going to write charts. We're going to write tabs, which is short for tablature, and we're going to write theory. So these are all different, but are used functionally in alignment. They're used together, but we get different knowledge from each one of these different categories. So we're first going to start with chord charts. So again, I would love you to follow me along with your own paper and pencil. We're going to make a little box up here, and we're going to label this nut. So that is our nut on the guitar, which is, if you can see this guitar, it's this white piece way up here at the very top of our neck, just before the headstock. It separates the headstock and the neck from our guitar. So that's going to be our nut. On all chord charts, you're going to have a bass line, which means the chord chart will show you where that chord is based on your guitar neck. Some chord charts show you a specific chart more down the neck.
Use this one.
I've been told to use this one. So some chord charts actually just show you this bit and not this bit. If it is this bit, they'll actually have numbers next to the chord chart showing you which fret it begins on. But anyway, we're going to start on the nut, which is the very top of the neck of the guitar. We're going to draw our 6 strings. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw our frets out. This is going to be our 1st fret, our 2nd fret, and our 3rd fret. So what we just drew here is the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd fret. It's this little bit. This is what most chord charts that you're going to see is going to be from the nut in the first couple of frets. Often every chord chart's a little bit different because there isn't one specific chord chart that everyone uses as a template. People make up their own chord charts, so they're all going to look very similar, but some might be a little bit different. Some might have the numbers of the frets next to them, like this. And that tells us this is the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd fret. But yeah, really what we need to know is we need to orient ourselves on what is this compared to how we're holding the guitar. How we do that is we next are going to label our string numbers. Over here is our 1st string, 2nd string, 3rd string, 4th, 5th, and 6th string. So if you've been with us for a little bit, you probably already know our 1st string is going to be I got to pick in the strings, is going to be our thinnest and highest pitch string. It's going to be this far right line, whereas our 6 is going to be our thickest and lowest pitch string. So you can kind of take this, and you could orient it right onto there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So a chord chart is going to have a specific chord allocated to it. So what we're going to use today for our example is the chord C major, which is just written as C, a big old capital C right there. So now we're going to actually draw this chord in. So I want you to make not solid circles, but open circles, and there'll be a reason for that. And so we're going to actually draw our C chord. So we're going to draw a circle on the 1st fret of the 2nd string. 3rd string is played openly, which we'll get to that in a second. The 4th string is on the 2nd fret. And on the 5th string, it's the 3rd fret. Now the next thing to know about chord charts are these things, X's and O's. X's and O's. No, I won't go into that song. So yeah, we use X's and O's on chord charts. And what they're used for, they're either going to be on top of the chart or on the bottom of the chart. Most commonly, they're up on top of the chart, but just so you can see this chart easier, I'm going to actually write it on the bottom. But what they are is it means the O is it's played openly. Open. The X is we don't play it, so we'll write mute. Sorry if my handwriting is a little sloppy. I'm trying to contort myself so you can see the best. So yeah, in a C major chord, we play the 1st string openly, and we play the 3rd string openly, but we do not play the 6th string. So from this chart, we see our nut and the fret numbers, which orient us on how we're perceiving this chart compared to when we're holding the guitar. We have our string numbers up here, also giving us an indicator of orientation. We see that the 1 and 3rd string are played openly. Again, sometimes these are above the nut. Our 2nd string is played on the 1st fret, 4th string on the 2nd fret, 5th string on the 3rd fret. This in and of itself is a very common way to see a chord chart. The last thing that I want you to write in, which is the reason why we left these open, is sometimes you'll see numbers inside of these circles, and that corresponds to our finger numbers to use. You probably already know this, but our index finger is 1, middle is 2, ring finger is 3, pinky is 4. So with the C major chord, we generally are going to use our 1 finger for the note that is played on the 1st fret of the 2nd string, our 2 for the 2nd fret of the 4th string, and a 3 on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. So that's telling us which finger numbers to use to create this chord. This is an example of a chord chart. Sometimes they take the exact same thing and they rotate it 90 degrees, so it'll actually be coming out this way, as opposed to how we've written it down. I would say you'll probably see this 90% of the time, but 10% of the time, some people create their chord charts horizontally and not vertically. Again, it's important just to orient yourself with seeing where the frets are counting up, where our strings are, and where the nut is, so that you know how to orient yourself and where these finger positions are on your fretboard. If there's any questions with that, post it in the comments below. If I don't see it come up right now, or you are watching this when it's saved down the road, just post a comment below and then I'll reply to your comment, or we could even meet up in a one-on-one Zoom and I could talk to you a little bit more about it. So next, and I should first conclude the chord charts with saying, why is this important? And the reason is so that we can open up a chord chart and play the song immediately. It's pretty much that simple. If you've seen my video on, I think it's level 11, jam 2 or 3 video, it's called Any Song, Anytime, Anywhere. This shows you how I'm able to randomly pick a song out of a list of hundreds of different songs, go to some chord charts, and within a matter of minutes be able to play it because I know how to read chord charts on the fly, not having to actually pick it apart, which you'll start by doing nice and slow. But eventually, you'll just be able to do it instantaneously. And that's how you can play any song immediately. So you don't have to go on YouTube, type in the song you want to watch someone where they're putting their fingers, pause the video, put your fingers there, play the video, hear how it sounds, pause the video, and all of that rigmarole of muscle memory, we can just sit down and play it immediately. That's why chord charts are important to know. So let's next move on to tabs. So similarly to chord charts, this is a way to see how to play chords, but it's also how to see how to play solo riffs, lead lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw 6 lines horizontally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to put a line here just as our baseline. Okay, so these 6 lines also correspond to our guitar. So we're going to actually label these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and those are our string numbers. So again, you could take this and you could just plug it right up on our guitar there so that you can kind of orient yourself. It's like I'm taking this off the paper and it's right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to write a C major chord. So again, I'm going to write C on the left side over here. Not in the middle, and you'll see why in a little bit, but write a C kind of right next to our, I don't want to call this the nut because this is not a chord chart. This is different. This is more like linearly reading sheet music. But we'll call this our bass line. So I'm going to write a C over here right next to our bass line. So now what we're going to do is, instead of writing circles, we're actually going to write a number, and that number corresponds to the fret that is being played. So what we're going to do is we're going to write 1 here. We're going to write 2 here. And we're going to write 3 here. So what this means is we're playing the 2nd string on the 1st fret, the 4th string on the 2nd fret, and the 5th string on the 3rd fret. The fact that these numbers are stacked on top of each other means that this is a chord. If they were not on top of each other, you would just be playing one note at a time. So we're actually going to draw that next. So now I want you to come just to the side of it, and with your pencil write a number 1. Not underneath it, but over to the side a little bit, we're going to write a number 2. And then again, not underneath it, but to the side, we're going to write a 3. So now these are playing these notes sequentially. So I'm going to put my pen down here really quick, grab the old Fender Stratocaster. I'm going to make a C chord. And so how this would be played, our tab right here that we just wrote out, is we play a C chord first, and then it's a number, just that, the 1st fret on the 2nd string, the 2nd fret on the 4th string, and the 3rd fret on the 5th string. So this tab would sound like this. So you can see if they're stacked on top of each other, we play it as a chord as 1. If they're not stacked and they're spaced apart, we play them individually. Sometimes you'll see multiple notes stacked on top of each other, and then you'll see a line of just singular notes. So you might even have a 2 here. So that means you play the 1 and 2 singularly, but then you play the 2 and 3 together after that. So why are tabs important? Well, if nothing else, it's another great way to learn how to play a piece of music. But if you are going to be getting into learning how to solo, learn specific solo lines, maybe you like Stairway to Heaven's solo. If you look up how to play Stairway to Heaven's solo, it's going to have chord tabs because you're going to need to know which notes you're playing sequentially. You could play Stairway to Heaven with chord charts, but it's just going to be the chords. They're not going to show you each individual note to play in those solo lines. So tabs are important so that you could learn how to play melody. Melody are a series of notes in a row that create the familiar sound of that song that you're familiar with. And solo lines, lead riffs, that type of a thing. But as we could see, we could also play chords with tabs if the numbers are stacked up on top of each other. Great. So last, we're going to be looking at theory. So what I want you to do is get your pencil out again. And this time, we're only drawing 5 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now these are this is called a staff, and if you've ever seen sheet music before, it's got all of these 5 lines that run across this piece of paper. Those are all called staves. They're all ways to display the musical notes that you need to play to create that song, to create those tones. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be drawing a treble clef. This can be a little tricky, so it's okay if yours looks a little wonky. There's a couple of things that are a must-do, though, when drawing this treble clef. There actually are a couple rules. So what we're going to do is we're going to start here below the first line on the left-hand side. We're going to come up. You're going to make a little line at the top. Did I do that wrong? Funny. No, I did that right. Did I do that? I did that wrong. Funny. Okay, so we're going to come up. We're going to loop to the right, make a little loop, and then what the rule is, we have to swirl around this second line up. Isn't that silly? But yeah, the treble clef, it comes up, it loops to the right, a small loop, and then we make a big old loop, and then it finishes swirling around the second line. And the reason is for that is because the treble clef is also known as the G clef, because that little line swirls around the G note, which is this line here. It's a little bit of a side piece of theory that you really don't need to memorize, but just so you know, all treble clefs will swirl around that second line, which makes it called the G clef or the treble clef. So the next thing we need to know is what we're looking at here. So we need another acronym or an acrostic way to memorize what notes we are looking at. So the one that you've probably heard in your past is called Every Good Boy Does Fine. And so this is the one that I learned as like 5 or 6, 7-year-old. So what those words, the first letter of those words spell out our lines. So starting at the bottom, every, E, good, G, boy, B, does, fine. So every good boy does fine. The first letter of each one of those words helps us distinguish what letter note corresponds to each one of these lines. E, G, B, D, F. So now, again, if we're going to take our C chord, so I'm going to draw C over here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to find our C. Now, I'm sure we all know our ABCs. So it's going to be A is going to be the space in between. B, C is going to be this space in between. Now we need to come back over, to here. This is where a little bit of theory that we're going to get into in the future, but how do we know what these actual notes are? Well, one nice thing about charts and tabs is we don't actually need to know the real notes, because it's telling us where to put our fingers. But the next step to take this is to know which notes we're hitting here. So if we know that the strings on a guitar are E, A, D, G, B, E, we're going to back up to our fourth string, E, A, D. So our fourth string played openly is a D. 1/2 step up is a D sharp. Next half step up is an E. If that went over your head, it's okay. We're going to get more into sharps and flats a little bit later. But just so you know, with a little bit of theory, we can conclude that pushing down that note right there in a C major chord is an E note. So we come back over here to our theory, and we found an E is this space between the D and the F. A, B, C, D, E, F. So we've circled our E right there. Same thing with this note. We know that the fifth string played openly is an A. Half step up is going to be an A sharp. B. There is no sharp between B and C, so it just jumps right up to a C. So that's going to be our next C above this one. So we have C, D, E, F, A, B, C. So it's actually going to be up here. Now, this is going to be a little trick. These are called ledger lines, and these are tiny little hidden lines that are above and below the staff that we don't really see. I'm going to draw a little ledger line right here. So that's going to be an extension of these 5 lines. So again, we're at E here, F, G, A, B, C would be our second ledger line up here. And we're going to draw a C note like that. We know that our 1 string and our 3rd string are played openly. So everyone, what's our number 1 string, our highest string played openly? Do you remember? E, A, D, G, B, E. So that's going to be a low E note or a high E note. But just for the fun of it, I'm going to put that down here. And then our 3rd string is our G note, so we're going to play this one. So this chord and this tab right here is this in music theory on the treble clef. We've got our E, our G, our C, our E, and our other C up here. So it might seem like a lot, but these are the three different components that all help us figure out how to play a song. Now, why is theory important if we already have the tabs? The reason is because with theory, they have all of these ways to help us realize rhythm and timing. Right here, we have no idea how long to play this 1 or 2 or 2 and 3 for. We just know we have to play it. But on theory, which we'll get into later, they'll have lines coming off the top. They'll have flags coming off the top here. They'll have dots behind it. Some will be filled in. Some will be by themselves. These all mean different timing. This is a whole note, gets 4 beats. That little dot means you get half of the time value that follows the note. It gets more complicated. Again, we'll get into that later. But I just want you to now realize why theory is important is because it helps us realize the timing on how to play these notes. If we've listened to Stairway to Heaven a million times and we look at the tabs, we can probably guess the timing based off of our memory from the past and all the times we've heard that song. We know when to play these notes. But if we didn't know that and someone asked you to play a song that you've never heard before, the theory is where you get the minutia of all of the detail that makes up a song. The timing, which notes, chords, singular notes to play. And more so than that, we have all these fun words. I don't even know if I'm going to be spelling this right, but crescendo. I think there might be an S in there somewhere. We'll just pretend it's crescendo. I'm pretty sure it's Latin, which means you get progressively louder. These types of phrases for tissimo, staccato. Staccato is kind of that all of these descriptive words that are in sheet music help us realize how we're going to be playing the music. None of these words come on tabs or charts. So again, these are all good for playing songs that we maybe have heard before, but if we want to play a song 100% correctly, how it was written, maybe we've never heard it before, you have to go all the way to theory. So one reason I laid it out this way is you could look at it as the least amount of detail that you need to know to the most amount of detail. So yeah, that is why these are all important to know. They're all very different. You could play the same song using all three versions. They get more complex as you move from left to right on our little chart board here. I hope that you don't now say that all music written down is all called charts or all called, crazy mumbo jumbo, because it really has its own specific rules, its own specific terminology. These are chord charts. This is chord tablature, short for tabs, and music theory, or theory for short. And you need to have all of them in order to be a musician, and you need to have all of them in order to be able to sit down and play any song, anytime, anywhere. So this is why you could see our third component of the STRUM method is all about not only reading, but then eventually remembering how to read chord charts, tabs, and theory, so that in the future, you don't have to sit down there and really work out every song individually, note by note, but you can look at a piece of sheet music and just sit down and play it. There's a lot that we can do with practicing guitar that doesn't actually have to do with holding your guitar in your hands. So get a theory book, start messing around with it, just kind of look through and start understanding the patterns that theory has. You can even buy books that are just tablature or just chord charts and familiarize yourself with those more and more so. We're going to be going through this more and more in depth throughout the next few months. And again, if you have any questions about today, hit me up in the comments or send me an email and I'll get back to you. But that's going to do it for today's STRUM Method sessions. I hope you learned a lot, the difference between chord charts, tabs, and theory. Keep jamming, jammers.